Well, let's be honest, democracy is about to be sold out by a man with a slick haircut and a donated suit. This is not a reset, this is realignment. You know, it's something that many of us argued that Keir Starmer was going to push for this very heavily as soon as he got into office.
Keir Starmer just betrayed Britain by doing what everyone told him not to.
Is it because he's stupid? He has no talent? He's won such a big majority that he doesn't care? He seems absolutely dead set on alienating some of the most important people in this country. Pensioners, farmers, waspy women today.
The people are beyond furious, and Starmer's days in government seem limited.
I mean, this is not just a reset. This is the rejoining in all but name. He is betraying what the people of this country voted for, and he's doing it sneakily. He's already earmarked or set aside more than 100 civil servants.
Starmer and his cronies are in crisis mode, but they have nowhere left to run.
And leaked documents have revealed the European Union is going to demand from Keir Starmer a surrender of UK fishing rights, all part of a post-Brexit trade deal.
They're also looking at freedom of movement amongst, well, students, essentially, which anyone under 30 actually is on the proposal, with Brexiteers and perhaps even those who didn't vote for Brexit, fearing that it betrays the results of the 2016 referendum.
Starmer has always been dishonest, but this time he has gone too far by plotting this sinister plan behind our backs.
They're not going back on the referendum on Brexit. We've been told that explicitly. But are they circumnavigating it?
Well, let's be honest, democracy is about to be sold out by a man with a slick haircut and a donated suit. This is not a reset, this is realignment. You know, it's something that many of us argued that Keir Starmer was going to push for this very heavily as soon as he got into office. And whilst many of us expected a little bit of smaller, more technical changes, there is a lot on the table all at once. And the question we really have to ask is, why are we even at this table in the first place?
What we're witnessing is an absolute shameful and disgusting show of Starmer's true colours.
But I actually think there's something more at play here. I think this is political. If we actually look where a lot of this has come from, it's not come from the Commission, it's come from the Council of Europe, it's come from European leaders. And what we're really seeing is the European Union leaders panicking about not what's happening in Europe, it's about what's happening over the other side of the Atlantic, and that's Donald Trump. The European Union's actual economic situation isn't great. And with the impending probably trade wars and tariffs coming from the United States, you know, a lot of this stuff is starting to kind of scare a lot of European leaders.
The European Union and Starmer are terrified of Donald Trump, and they're trying to team up and protect their socialist agendas.
They want to kind of bring the UK back to heel. And this is not, it won't be a negotiation because it's Keir Starmer. He's just got to roll over and sign, have his belly tickled and say, where do I sign? You know, this is a real betrayal, in my opinion.
And that's what a lot of people will be frightened of, is that when we left in Brexit, when we left Europe, they were decidedly hostile to us and gave us all the impression that, you know, that our relationship with them would be one of punishment.
Yeah.
Starmer has brought Britain to its knees, and he's going to just agree to whatever demands they make, like a spineless idiot.
Keir Starmer's turkey is stuffed. You know, the language is already hostile. They're like, you need us, and like, you know, this kind of, it's not, there's no partnership here, and there never has been. You know, so many people in the United Kingdom have like kind of downplayed the hostility of the European Union in any negotiation that we've engaged with them, and yet the EU, in their right, have pushed forward to put forward their own agenda, and yet the UK has always taken a back step. It's about time that we had a Prime Minister at some point who decided maybe it's time that we put the British interests first.
Nobody likes Starmer and his incompetent gang, not even the European Union that he's cozying up to.
If you come out and say that, the British public will probably have a lot more respect for you than you saying one thing and then weaseling out of it in another way and trying to say, oh, it's just a technical skirting, or it's just a little detail here, a little change there. That infuriates people even more because it just shows that you're not being upfront and you're not being honest. And that is Keir Starmer through and through.
The biggest problem here is Starmer being a cowardly weasel who's trying to undermine your choices.
What Keir Starmer's job in this particular parliament is to bring the UK into alignment with the EU. So basically, whilst there are a lot of people say they want to rejoin, there's no appetite for another referendum. And that, if Keir Starmer pushes that too soon, there could be a bit of a backlash, and you would see Brexit probably kind of gain support. So what he's going to try and do is make us a member of the EU in everything but name.
Starmer's evil plan is to slowly enslave us to the European Union again, and he thinks he can get away with it.
Free movement and migration is still a huge issue for this country. So why is this survey, why are people supposedly saying, actually, no, we wouldn't mind a bit of free movement?
I think it's because there's always been this narrative that somehow you can't do something, that somehow you've had this right taken away. You can move to another country in the European Union. You can study in another country. You know, it's this idea that, and this narrative that has been pushed very effectively by more European Union-friendly outlets, that, you know, that somehow that right has been taken away, and it's simply not true. So I think when people are asked, would you like that right back? You know, some people say, well, yeah, of course I would.
They fooled the people into wanting something free movement when immigration is already a crisis in Britain. The people are waking up and there's a swift and furious backlash mounting up against Starmer.
A fresh Brussels plot to have Britain surrender our sovereignty once again is laid bare. Secret papers talked about over the weekend, fueling mounting fears that this government wants to unpick Brexit. He'd sent yesterday, Starmer, this surrender squad to Brussels of 100 civil servants.
Well, they deny that actually exists, but there are civil servants working on some form of reset on our relations with the EU. Keir Starmer, of course, he campaigned for a second referendum. No fan of Brexit. He was shadowed Brexit secretary before he became leader of the opposition and then Prime Minister.
Starmer did not expect to be exposed for the entire nation to see his malicious plans. Not only did he cook up this entire scheme to sell us off back into the European Union, he has already created and sent a whole squad to start the process already. This man has no respect for what the British public wants, and it's obvious just how tone deaf he is. Now, the scared Starmer is hiding behind idiotic justifications that he's only trying to bring us closer to the European Union, but nobody is buying that nonsense.
Is it not a question of what the British people said they wanted it?
That's exactly the point.
And what concerns me, not actually concerns me, terrifies me, is we are now under the governorship or whatever, or prime ministers. This man does not seem to understand.
It doesn't matter what Starmer thinks about Brexit. The bottom line is that the British people made a choice and he's undermining it without any regard for our democracy and right to choose. The fact that he was doing all of this in secret behind our backs is proof that he knew nobody would accept this nonsense. People were already furious with Starmer over his long list blunders and betrayals of the public. At this rate, Starmer is finished, along with the Labour Party.
Is it because he's stupid? He has no talent? He's won such a big majority that he doesn't care? He seems absolutely dead set on alienating some of the most important people in this country. Pensioners, farmers, waspy women today we'll talk about, and 52% of the country that voted to leave the European Union.
It doesn't make sense how a Prime Minister can behave so ignorantly. All three possible explanations of his tone, deaf behavior are just as bad. It's hard to see if Starmer's just plain stupid, incompetent, or too arrogant to care for the very public that elected him. Literally every single demographic wants him gone, and it's no wonder that his approval ratings are in the gutter.
The only thing I can see happening is that, and you've told me about this, the more this goes on, be it farming communities, pensioners, MPs, be they new, be they loyal, they start getting emails, it turns into a torrent of emails, they will start going, this is going to cost me my job. That is exactly what happened to Boris Johnson. I find it astonishing.
Whichever way you look at it, things are not looking good for Starmer. He is on a spree of horrible decisions that are enraging the British public consistently. How much more will the public tolerate before they finally decide that they have had enough? Labour knows that Starmer is becoming a liability and no amount of damage control will save them, so they might just get rid of him sooner than we expect.
Are you surprised, genuine question, are you surprised at how deaf he is? Or did you expect his approach?
I think he's ruthless, I think he's determined, and I think he'll do what he wants. I think
You think he's ruthless?
Yes, I do. Well, look at the way he treats some of his colleagues. Louise Hay, thrown under a bus, Transport Secretary, rather appropriately. And I just think, if you look at a number of decisions Keir Starmer has made, he is very clear in what he wants, and he doesn't care.
Nobody's surprised at this point. It was clear from the start that Starmer was tone deaf and incompetent. The past 5 months have been nothing but proof of that, and the nation eyed regretting ever electing such a horrible leader. Starmer has become a pathetic excuse of a leader, and he's dooming the people on all fronts. The economy is in shambles, immigration is through the roof, and now he's trying to chain us back to the European Union.
Actually, however appalling this man is, and they said I'd never vote for him, that as long as there is this Reform Party and the Tory party still exists, or vice versa, that those two if they don't collaborate or one doesn't destroy the other, he will sneak in possibly by the back door next time as well. I can't
look at
sat
some of the
here
polls.
5 months believe. I can't believe that the British people would not have Starmer back.
There's a very concerning possibility that's going to be disastrous for this nation. People are speculating that the lack of unity between the right-leaning parties of this nation might just let Starmer weasel his way into power in the next elections as well. By that point, Starmer would have absolutely ruined this country, and if he gets back again, everyone will be doomed. Which is exactly why the British people are so outraged. Without a doubt, Starmer is never getting into power again for at least another decade. And that's assuming that we're able to survive the consequences of his idiotic policies.
Now, the Sun newspaper has seen documents that kind of prove that Keir Starmer, in his mania to reset our relationship with the EU, has gone to the table and is in the process of agreeing to demands from Ursula von der Leyen and the Brussels gang that kind of basically ruin Brexit.
It's borderline manic behavior from Starmer and the Labour Party to push this hard for this reset. They have already made huge concessions, the consequences of which you wouldn't believe. But what other demands will Starmer just give into? He has never had a spine, and it seems that Starmer will end up selling out this entire nation, all for nothing other than his stubborn ideological bent, the open border socialist utopia that he loves so much.
We are going to be required by the EU right off the bat to give up our fishing rights, our hard-earned fishing rights, to allow under 30-year-old Europeans, under 30s foreigners, to just come here, no questions asked, and live. So there go the borders. So anyone under 30 will be allowed to come here. And finally, we will have to agree to do exactly what we're told by the European Court of Justice.
The European Union knew just how weak and useless Starmer is, and they've started off with huge demands. Our fishing industry is going to be absolutely clobbered, and that's on top of the farming community that Starmer has already thrown under the bus. So Softy is going to end up making us so dependent on Europe for food and survival that we'll have to agree to every single one of their demands. In what world was it a good idea to allow even more immigrants? We're already suffering a crisis.
I mean, this is not just a reset. This is the rejoining in all but name. He is betraying what the people of this country voted for, and he's doing it sneakily. He's already earmarked or set aside more than 100 civil servants to get round the table with our European brothers.
For all intents and purposes, we're already under the thumb of the European Union. Starmer and his gang went ahead with this abhorrent plan behind our backs. Regardless of the result of the Brexit referendum, the point is that we decided upon something democratically. For Starmer to undermine, that means that he has no respect for this country and its people. Maybe that's why he's so dead set on ruining everything great about this nation. Even people who voted against Brexit are turning against Starmer.
I mean, socialists don't particularly like democracy, but what Starmer's doing is an utter affront to the British people's democratic decision to leave the EU, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And I say this as someone who voted for Remain, and I spent quite a long time, wanging on about the merits of Remain.
This government under Starmer is doing everything they can to make sure they never win an election again. While Rachel Reeves is busy ruining the economy, Starmer is making sure that he destroys all trust and credibility that the Labour Party has. No one in their right mind will believe anything that this party says anymore. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is making the best out of this situation. The Tories messed up, Labour is messing up, and Farage might just end up being the only winner.
Is the one thing that's more important than our own individual political views is the protection of our democracy. It's okay for people on whatever side after a vote, if they lose, to carry on campaigning for it. That's part of democracy as well. But what's not okay is kind of the smoke and mirrors, by the back door Brexit, which kind of a bit like Hotel California, you can check out, but you're never going to quite leave. That is unacceptable.
What Starmer should have done is campaigned for whatever he wanted. If he thought returning to the European Union was truly the best thing to do for this country's well-being, then he should have brought it up publicly, like any man with integrity would do. The people could have chosen again, but the reality is, Starmer is so pathetic and insecure that he knew he could never gain support. mostly because his ideas are too stupid to make any sense. There's one major consequence that we're already seeing unfold before our eyes, and things are going to get much worse.
And if Starmer goes down this route and signs this new deal and effectively throws our fishing communities under the bus, then I suspect we'll end up having campaigns, coordinated campaigns on fishing, effectively, no fishing, no food, like no farmers, no food, whereby those communities, rightly so, will take some action. I think that is what's coming next.
The farmers are on strike over the ridiculous inheritance tax, and we're expecting potential food shortages already. Now, the fishing community has been hit by Starmer and his gang. Remember when they promised to help out the working class Brits? That turned out to be a blatant and disgusting lie to just gain support. Now that they've won, they're showing their true colors. It seems that Starmer's a huge hypocrite and a liar, and Nigel Farage is overjoyed over his blunders. As for the people trying to defend Starmer, they sound just as delusional as him.
Look, if you go into negotiations, when you go in, both sides are quite far apart, and then you come together. We want things, they want things. If we want them, we're going to have to trade. There will be some compromise, right? I mean, they're not going to get what they want. We're not going to get everything that we want.
Thinking that the European Union, that's already hostile towards us, would give us any favorable deal is beyond naive. Just like the trade unions that forced Starmer to give them inflation-busting pay rises, the European Union will take advantage of his weak and desperate behavior to get everything they want. There's no winning deal here, and it's evident by the kind of language they use towards us. So far, the conditions we've already agreed to only exclusively benefit the European Union. Think about it. Not only did we lose our fishing rights, we're also allowing in more immigrants amid an immigration crisis.
Keir Starmer, I think, will have a bias towards doing whatever he can to get us closer to the European Union again. I also don't think he's the strongest of leaders. Listen, I don't want to rehearse the Brexit arguments of 8 years ago. I think we all have the scars. I wanted Brexit to work. I believe any country, if it wants to be its own independent country, should be. There was a mandate there, but the political class in this country let the people down. And Brexit didn't turn out to be the Brexit that I think a lot of people voted for.
Starmer is biased because of his own personal agenda to cozy up to Europe. We've seen time and time again how he has prioritized Europe over the needs of the British people, and it's no different this time. The whole point of Brexit was to make Britain self-sufficient and less dependent on its neighbours. Our politicians have absolutely failed to deliver on those promises, and Starmer is here to make the matters worse. He's chaining us to the same problem that we tried hard to get away from. This stupid and incompetent government is reversing any progress that's been made since Brexit. It's especially disgusting when you find out about the significantly better alternatives we have.
Is going to start to give more ammunition to people like Nigel Farage and Reform UK, because if people start to think that we're moving closer towards the European Union, you can bet your bottom dollar or euro that what will happen is Farage will leap on that and will use it as a campaigning tool. And the problem is the Conservatives fought tooth and nail with each other over Brexit. Labour tried to stop Brexit. Reform can clear up here.
Nigel Farage and Reform UK are the only winners in this situation. They'll rightfully use this blunder to campaign and win even more supporters. Richard Tice is already warning Starmer that they won't tolerate this shameless betrayal of the British public. Labour and Starmer are handing a potential victory to Nigel Farage on a silver platter, and he'll gladly take it. All the while, the Tories are struggling to get a grip after their defeat.
Is that actually you have an incoming administration in the United States of America as well. We're looking at a time in which France and Germany, both the top players within the European Union, have political turmoil at the moment. I think it's safe to say that's
Yes,
probably an understatement.
Yes, I think you're correct,
So
Darren.
so surely Sir Keir Starmer's going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place here, with the Americans wanting him to be closer to them and the EU saying, actually, we could do with Britain right now.
Donald Trump is laughing at Starmer and his attempts to oppose him. Any sensible government would have seen the massive benefits of furthering our ties with the United States, but Starmer's intent on running in the exact opposite direction. This lot love to promise growth, but their actions paint an entirely different story. What's more is that we have a golden opportunity for growth here. Starmer could potentially fix everything he's done wrong with the economy with one obvious move. However, first, he needs to do something about the immigration crisis he's creating.
On that point there, the immigration point, 1.5 million homes Labour are saying they want to build.
Yeah.
Apparently we don't have the builders.
No.
So is that going to be another way in which they say, well, look, you know, we need people from Europe because we need the immigration?
Possibly. I mean, you know, I'm relatively relaxed when it comes to immigration, though I have a very different view on what is illegal immigration, and maybe we'll touch on that a little bit.
But 1 million people came last year.
Yeah, exactly.
That's too high.
Exactly. And, you know, the infrastructure's not in place.
Our systems are already overburdened by millions. Now, Starmer is allowing more and more immigrants from Europe to just walk in, no questions asked. How's he going to house them? Angela Rayner's delusional promise of 1.5 million houses is nowhere near enough to deal with this huge influx that we're experiencing.
That is going to put us on a collision course with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has made it very clear he's not a fan of the EU. And I believe, currently as a sovereign nation, we should have the best of both worlds. That should be one of the benefits of Brexit. You trade with European countries, and also you trade with America. Because, of course, when we were in the EU, there were limitations on what we could and couldn't do with America. Now we're out of the EU, we should be able to benefit from that.
And the veterinary point, that Scarlett made earlier, actually I think that shows the quite malicious side of the EU negotiating team.
Starmer could prove that Britain is a strong nation that can make its own decisions. Closer deals with both the United States and the European Union is the way to the future. We could supercharge the economy, but will this stubborn and tone-deaf government listen? Starmer must answer to the British public and listen to our demands. Only then will this chain of idiotic policies stop. That's something you can genuinely help out with by liking this video and subscribing to the channel.